right. Hello, everyone. It is good to be back on another afternoon tea time. So, let me just... sorry, it was an important text message I just got. Some cool stuff, actually. Can't really talk much about it because it's still a secret. But let me just get to my YouTube channel so I can read your guys' comments as soon as they start coming in. And then reduce my volume so you guys don't hear the ads coming from my own. Alright, so hello Christianity, hello Dino, Jeffrey, Emmett, how's it going? Emmett says, good afternoon Alex, how are you? I'm good. Dino says, hey there from Nashville. Awesome, hello. Yeah, so I just, well not just, but earlier this week I came back from California. So I finally visited the Queen Mary after all this time. Emmett says, when are you coming back to NOLA? Oh, I would love to, but that's not on the cards right now. That's far into the future, so... Rapid Transit says, you don't know how happy it made me when I seen the thumbnail of you on the Queen Mary. It really cheered me up because you deserve to return home, basically, to your favorite ship. It was legendary. Oh, yeah, it was. And that's what we're going to be talking about today on the live stream, is basically my trip to the Queen Mary, you know, what's changed, what's different, how do I, you know, what happened, you know, what do I think? If you haven't already... I actually did a podcast with Shiloh on the Queen Mary itself. So we did that. It posted yesterday. It's now on the channel for everybody to see. And so you can... There's video and pictures of the things we did and stuff like that on that podcast. So it's not just us sitting in front of a camera. There's actually stuff to look at, you know, when you see our podcasts. And there's also a little bit of a news report on there as well. Yeah, so... oh, lots of comments now. Okay, let's see. Dino says, does anyone know if Queen Mary is pet friendly? It is, yeah, because, I don't know how they're pet friendly, but they are. I often see in videos, and even when I was there the other day, there are people with their dogs and stuff on the ship, just walking around, you know, strolling. Like I said, I don't know how they're pet friendly, because, you know, if you're up on sun deck and your dog really needs to, you know, use the lawn or something, the lawn is 12 decks down and way off the ship to, you know, so I don't know how they're pet friendly, honestly. It doesn't make sense to me, but they are. So, because I've seen people walking around with their dogs on leashes and stuff, and so yeah, they are. Yeah, so what was I gonna say? Kat says, next time get a stateroom there to stay overnight. I would love to. It's out of my price range right now. Even the trip to California, it wouldn't have happened without my cousin. My cousin, you know, she heard that I wanted to come down to California. Originally, I was going to go down there because someone had made an offer to sell me a table, an original first-class Queen Mary table. And I really looked into it. I looked into how I can afford it, you know, how I would get it from California up to here in Oregon, and it just didn't work out. I didn't have enough money. There just wasn't enough money for anything, and so it didn't work out to purchase the table. But the plans were already rolling at that point for a trip to California. My cousin had offered, you know, to pay for my dad and I to come down, you know, to give us plane tickets and then to stay at her house. You know, she lives in Southern California, and she happened to be in town that weekend, which was really amazing because she travels for work. So it just, all the stars aligned in such a way that it made it possible for me to go down to the Queen Mary and meet up with friends and family and stuff like that. So it was really, really magical because I don't, through my own means, I don't have enough money to go down there. I don't have enough money to pay for plane tickets or even a train ticket or anything like that to get down there. So, and I, without my cousin, I wouldn't have had a place to stay, you know, so it just, everything just aligned perfectly for me to go. And, you know, I took the opportunity and I went. And I'm really glad I did, because that was the best day. I honestly, I was only on the Queen Mary for one day. That's it. That's all I could afford, because we had to end up going back up to Portland, Oregon. So, so that day was the best day I've had in a very, very long time. Just because the sheer amount of people that I met, you know, there, the people I already knew and people I didn't know, making new friends there, you know, and just overall enjoying the ship. I mean, that's something that, let me get my tea started, but that was something that was very, it meant a lot to me, because the last time I was on the ship, I was not a fan of the Queen Mary back then. I thought it was interesting, and it was catching my interest that day. That day is when I first kind of fell in love with the ship, but I knew virtually nothing about it. I didn't know how to get around it. You know, I would have gotten lost very easily. And so this time around, being able to see it and explore it from the eyes of a fan who knows now a lot about it, it was just a really amazing experience. And, you know, I can't wait to go back. Honestly, I was telling my friend Shiloh, I said, I don't know when I'll ever be able to go back to the Queen Mary, but one day was not enough. I mean, there was so much stuff I wanted to film on my camera so I could bring it to you guys on my channel. I remember a long time ago, I was planning a 6-day trip to California. A long time ago. This was maybe a year or two ago. I was really thinking it was going to happen, and I was planning a 6-day trip to California, and for 5 of those days, I was going to stay on board the Queen Mary. And I remember my friend Chris was like, "You're insane. Why would you spend that much money to stay on the ship?" And I kept trying to tell him, I'm like, there is a lot of stuff I need to do on that ship. I said, not just, I mean, mostly it was all content for YouTube, but I said the other thing too was at least taking a day, just a solid day, to just enjoy the ship, relax, and see it with my own eyes instead of having to look through a camera the whole time, and just spend a day with friends and family, and then the rest of the days, the other 4 days I'd be on the ship, would be all filming and getting everything I needed. You know, I wanted to get every little detail, you know, things like the old-fashioned, you know, cigarette butt holders, you know, the old-fashioned, like the various door handles and things like, I want to get that on photograph and film, so, or video, I should say, so I could make content on it in the future. But when I realized that that this trip was going to happen this month, I knew I would only have 12 hours aboard the ship. So going from planning out a 5-day, you know, full schedule and condensing it down to 12 hours was extremely difficult. Particularly because, you know, like I said, one of those days I was going to spend on the ship for 5 days was to be with friends and family and just enjoy the ship with them. But that had to be included in my 12 hours this past visit. And so I had a huge group with me everywhere we went, an entourage, if you will. And so it did make it challenging to relax and enjoy the ship when I'm also trying to keep conversation with 8 other people as well as taking time out of the day to film the ship and make sure I get it on camera. It was a challenge, but it had to be done because I didn't want to skip on any of those things. I didn't want to skip talking to people and hanging out with them. I didn't want to skip videoing the ship and getting photographs, and and I didn't want to skip absorbing some of the atmosphere of the ship. So it was definitely not easy to do all that in 12 hours, but we did get it done. We managed to schedule people throughout the day. Literally to schedule people throughout the day. I mean, first thing we did when we got there was just a very quick walk around of main hall and stuff, and then we waited at Starboard Promenade for my friend Eric to arrive because he had no idea I was going to be there. We were going to surprise him, and he was going to be completely blown away because he hadn't seen me in 5 years, and he's a really good friend, so I wanted to surprise him. And so, then we had breakfast at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then after that we were supposed to meet up with 2 people who had befriended Shiloh and wanted to speak to me as well. We had various places I had to go on the ship that I had to see and video. I had a meeting scheduled that day with people at QMI Restore the Queen. I had a scheduled meeting with Mary Rower and Mike Rower, who Mary is the executive director of QMI Restore the Queen. And so, I had a really busy schedule. I mean, it was just one thing after the other all day long. But it was nice. It was really nice because at certain times of the day, I had to be in one place, and so I'd be like rushing to get across the ship to be at that spot and stuff like that. So it was wild, but it was fun. And I didn't do much, eating on the ship, actually. I had breakfast on the ship, which was a waffle, and the waffle was really good. It was a Belgian waffle, but the price tag on that waffle was like $18. And I'm like, okay, this is a good Belgian waffle, but there's no way, that I think anybody should spend $18. And that was the cheapest thing on the menu. So I don't know, that dish needs to be reworked or something, because it was just a waffle, a little scoop of whipped cream, and half of a strawberry that was sliced up. For that price, you should get, a bunch of candied strawberries all over it or something. I don't know. It just didn't seem, that didn't seem, but that was a treat that my friend Eric's mother had treated me to. So I didn't technically have to pay for it, but I felt bad ordering it because I didn't know anything else on the menu. I was like, I want to get something that'll fill me up because I probably won't eat till dinner time, and I thought, but I don't want to break the bank because someone else is paying for my breakfast. So I got the waffle, but I should have got what Shiloh's mom ordered. Shiloh's mom, Martina, she got, I think, like a breakfast burrito, or was it an omelet? I don't remember what it was, but she had a full plate of food, and I thought just for a couple bucks more I could have got that. So I don't know, but it was good. Breakfast was good regardless. I'll tell you what though, the food that I liked the most on the ship was they have this new flatbread pizza in the observation bar. Oh man, that was one of the best flatbread pizzas I've ever had in my life. And I don't usually say that because I'm not normally a fan of flatbread pizzas. Usually, I'll order like an actual pizza. But that was really delicious. I mean, it was absolutely delicious. I don't know what it cost. I think it cost I paid for that myself. I think that cost about $22, maybe $24. But it was worth it. I know that sounds crazy. It was a little personal flatbread pizza, but I mean, it wasn't that small. It was probably about that big. But it was good. It was really, really good. I wanted to get another one, but at that time when I was eating the pizza, it was getting late into the night, and I knew that my dad was going to pick me up from the ship, and we were going to go eat at this other fast food place that we used to love to eat at, and we haven't been there in like 5 years. So Yeah, it was. It was, yeah. So the food on the ship was good, just pricey, very pricey. But I think of Queen Mary business wise kind of like Disneyland. It's a place that you're going to be, and you're probably going to be there all day, and so they can charge you extra for things like food, knowing that you'll probably pay for it. But but still, so it would be nice to get more bang for your buck. But yeah, and then there were things about the ship that I learned. Sorry, just pouring this out because I need to start making the tea. What I didn't know was that you could get free admission on the ship if you have a reservation at a restaurant on the ship. So basically, they charge admission, just like a theme park. Time is 1:17, so 1:21, I think, is when the tea will be done. So they charge admission like a theme park. And the off-hours admission is $16. So if you get there before the hours of 9 a.m. to, 5 p.m. or something like that, or 6 p.m., if you get on the ship before that, you only have to pay $16. But what I didn't know is that if you already have a reservation on the ship... but before I get to that... and the during hours admission is much more expensive. It's $45, but it includes a tour, a free, not free, but it's included in your admission. One tour on the ship. And that's actually a pretty good deal considering that the tours that they give you to select for that included admission usually themselves cost about $20. So really you're paying more like $25 admission per person, but you get a tour on top of that. So it's usually bundled together, and they do that because they want to sell you tours. They want you to walk away learning something about the ship. And the tours really are worth it, you guys. It depends on what you get. They have this one tour that I think is very, very premium. It's like some kind of haunted tour that's like $200. I would never pay for that, me myself. That's just too much. But the other tours can range from $15 to $35 per person, and those are the ones that are definitely worth the money, because those are really good tours. But in any case, what I didn't know was that if you have a reservation at one of the restaurants, you get free admission. You can just walk onto the ship. They just say, show me your reservation, and that was about it. So that was really cool. But I didn't know that, so I ended up paying the $16. I was there at like 8 something, at like 8:50 or so. So it was just before the 9 o'clock time, and so I paid the $16. But that's okay. I want to support the ship, so at least paying $16 admission is not so bad. But thankfully, I didn't have to pay the $45 because I don't need the tours. I've been on many tours on the ship before. Not that I memorized them, but I make the content on the Queen Mary, so I know the stuff about the ship. So I don't need a tour. So that's why I would prefer to pay a cheaper price, because I'd rather just walk around the ship myself at this point. But the tours are worth it if you're new to the Queen Mary. But what was I getting at? Time is 1:20, so one more minute on that tea. What was I going to say? So, yeah. Yeah, and then you can also, if you eat at a restaurant on the ship, they can, validate your parking a little bit. So the parking is $18, but if you eat at a restaurant, you get free admission onto the ship, and you can validate your parking, which I think takes $10 off the parking. So really, you're only paying $8 for parking, and you get free admission onto the ship, and you get to eat at one of the restaurants. So that's a really good deal when I think about it, because I'm the kind of person, I'm very frugal. So when I think about how much things cost, I was criticizing the ship I think just a month or two ago about, oh, the high prices of admission and blah, blah. But I didn't know that you could get on for free if you had a reservation. I didn't know that they validated your parking. I mean, they used to, but I heard that they didn't do it anymore, but they did for us. So, so there are ways to get on the ship very cheap, and definitely worth it, I think. So, you just got to play your cards right, I think. Yeah. Let me look at these things. Oh, it's time for the tea. I want to get to some questions and comments, so let me just scroll back up. Okay, so Ozzy says, how is Alex's weather? Alex's weather is pretty good. It snowed the other day, so I actually went for a walk in the snow. The snow got about 3 to 4 inches deep, which is the deepest it's been since I've lived up here. And I've only lived up here since, for 5 years. But that is the deepest it's gotten so far, was 4 inches. I was pretty amazed. But yeah, so the snow is melting now, but it's not entirely gone. It's still on the ground in a nice thick layer. Alright, so Lachlan says, hey Alex, haven't been on one of these in a while. Kevin says, hello from snowy Toronto. Hello. Christianity says, Alex, are you into visiting graves of famous people? The graves of famous people. Not really. I don't like going places where the dead are. I'm not a fan of graveyards, funeral homes. I don't even like nursing homes, even though there's living people at nursing homes. They're quite sad places. I grew up in a family of very elderly people. A lot of, when I was young, most of the family members in my family were very old already. And so I went to a lot of funerals as a kid. And that's also the reason why I don't like the smell of flowers. I can't stand the smell of flowers. Every time I smell flowers, I immediately, a wake pops in my head. Being at a wake and all the flowers everywhere smells like a funeral home. So I definitely do not like the smell of flowers. But yeah, been to a lot of funerals as a kid, and been to a lot of cemeteries to bury family members. It's just not a pleasant feeling for me. Yeah, so, and then of course, my mother's side of the family, they have traditions of going to visit graves of family members who have passed. On my dad's side of the family, they don't believe in visiting graves. They don't believe that you are there. Your soul is in heaven or somewhere else. And so in my dad's side of the family, we don't visit graves because, only what's left of your remains is there. So there's no reason to. My mom's side of the family, they do visit their family members, but even all of those family members are gone now. On my mom's side, nobody that I used to know is left. So, yeah, it's weird. When I think about my past, my family, it's so weird. It's pretty much just me, my dad, and my sister, and and now her son. She, my 1-year-old nephew and stuff like that, and my brother-in-law. But, I mean, basically, whoever lives up here in Portland with me is like basically the last of the immediate family I have. The rest are my cousins who live down in California and a few other places in the United States, but I hardly ever see them. But yeah, so it's weird. I just remember going to a lot of family gatherings, lots of family gatherings as a kid, because the elder members of our family used to put these things together, and people would all join up, and I'd hang out with my cousins for a day, but now all that's done and gone. It's weird. Hello, Lori. Yeah, watch the live stream whenever you have time. Cat Kingdom says, "Hi, Alex. Would you ever sell something like stickers or other types of merch?" I used to, but the problem is that I really didn't have any buyers for my merch because, I mean, in the end, it's like, who's Alex the historian? You know, I don't even have 100,000 subscribers yet. I'm really nobody, and so there's really people don't really feel the need to buy merch with my face on it. You know, I'm not anybody special. So, but I have thought about making merch that is more geared towards the content itself. So stuff that is reminiscent of ocean liners, steam trains, that kind of thing. I have ideas on what to do. Problem is, I just have no time to do it. Making my own merch is a whole business venture within itself, and I don't have the time for it because I'm making the content right now on my channel, which already makes me money. So, yeah, I just really don't have the time. I wish I had someone to edit my videos for me, someone very experienced, because it does take someone very experienced to do what I do. And then that would free up more time for me to do the things that I'd like to do, like make merch. You know, as well as I'm involved in several different projects. You know, I'm getting back involved with QMI Restore the Queen, at least in the capacity of trying to help raise awareness of their efforts, but also, you know, I'm also working on the Yarrow project with Fog Bank Industrial Arts, you know. And that's a proposal that we have to put together, and I'm currently working on it. In fact, I've got preparation for artwork that I'm making for it, because I used to do art, so I do have a artistic side of me, and so I'm actually making concept art for the Yarrow project, and then we'll have to eventually, I think before summer, I think sometime this spring is when some of those ideas will be brought towards the management of the Queen Mary. You know, and then I've got projects on the side that I want to present to management for things of my own, that, well, not my own, but things that are my ideas for what they can do on the ship. And I've got that stuff lined up that I want to present to them at some point, and I've got to make concept art for that as well. So yeah, it's a lot. I you know, there's an old saying, you know, that when you've got a lot of stuff to do, you're being spread thin. And that's how I feel. I often feel like I've got so much to do on a daily basis. I'm feeling very spread thin. I'm feeling like, you know, like I can never get to everything I need to do because I've got so much on my plate. But it's stuff that I like doing, at least. You know, if you had a lot of stuff on your to-do list and you didn't want to do any of it, that would be just miserable. But I do like what I do. I just wish I had more time in the day for all of it. You know, I feel like there just aren't enough hours in the day to do all the things I would like to do on a daily basis. Get all the little projects and things working and done. You know, I'm working on a fiction novel. I've been working on a fiction novel since I was a teenager, but the most recent iteration of that novel, I think, will finally be the one that I think will make a lot of sales. But I never have the time to get around to it. And I've got my train layout in my office, the model railroad. I never get around to that either because I'm always working on this. So, yeah, I feel very spread thin. There's just not enough time in the day to do all the things I want to do. And then on top of that, you know, this YouTube channel is how I make money. But because I'm so spread thin on that too, I'm not making enough money to really support myself. So it's just like, there's so much. I need like more hours in the day and more hands on my body to like do stuff and build things, and and it's just like, I could have 2 hands doing concept art and 2 hands editing a video. Maybe 4 eyes too, so I can have 2 eyes on each. But gosh, it's just it's so much. All right, let's taste this tea here. Cheers. Oh, that's perfect. This is Yorkshire Gold, by the way, in case you're wondering. I've found that Yorkshire Gold and what's the other one? Earl Grey are my favorite teas. Dino says, did anything surprise you about the Queen Mary? You're not the first person to ask me that. Did anything surprise me about the Queen Mary? I wouldn't say anything surprised me about the Queen Mary, because I know it so well now that, nothing really comes as a shock or a surprise or anything that I didn't expect. What I will say is just what I've been saying, was that I've been looking at the Queen Mary on screens for the last 5 years. I haven't laid eyes on the ship or inside the ship in about 5 years. So finally being there, everything is different sizes than I remembered in my head. The main hall was a lot smaller than I remember. But in video, I have it on wide-angle lenses, so the room looks much bigger on screen than it really is. Or walking down the corridors, my head was not too far from the ceiling on the corridors, and I forgot that, that the corridors are that short. Because in video, me and my friends, when we take video of the ship, the camera's often below our faces, so we're usually holding it down here. So when you look at it in the video, you forget that you're not looking at it from eye level, you're looking at it from below eye level, and so everything appears taller. And so, yeah, I'd say the dimensions of the ship definitely threw me off the day I was there, especially driving up to the ship. There was no cruise ship behind it that morning, or was there? Oh, I don't remember. But I just remember seeing the Queen Mary herself with nothing but a landscape of an open landscape around her. She looks like the tallest thing in the world from that distance. And she's not, she's tall. She's a tall ship, but the illusion, is definitely there, because there isn't much around her to rival her height. So it makes her appear twice as tall as she probably really is. That being said, she is a very tall ship. Just from the water line up to sun deck is about 90 feet, so that's pretty tall. Hello, Tyler. Yeah, I saw a video from Project Britannica. It was pretty cool. It was pretty neat. A little creepy, too. Marks has got a new phone in the mail yesterday, an S22 Plus. Oh, nice. Mine's an S23. My previous phone, which was a Galaxy Note 11, I think? Or was it a Note 10? I don't remember, but it was still working fine, but I needed upgrades, because I knew that I'd be taking my phone if I went traveling to New Orleans or to the Queen Mary, and I knew I'd be taking a lot of videos and pictures on my phone, if I wasn't using my cameras, because I have 2 different cameras. And, your phone's always a really good backup when you really need to take a quick video and you don't have time to set up your cameras. So I got this S23, and I really like it. I could have gotten the S24, but I don't like the AI on the S24. It makes pictures look a bit muddy because the AI takes over and is like, here, let me smooth everything out for you. And then it looks like a painting. It just, so I was like, you know what, the S23 doesn't have that. It takes things in a very high definition, so I liked this one more. But yeah, I got this phone probably a year ago now, actually. Well, no, I got it before I went to New Orleans. But like a month before I went to New Orleans, or 2 months. I don't remember. I think it was 6 months ago I got this phone. It doesn't feel that long. Emmett says, have you been on any transatlantic cruises like the Queen Mary? No, I've never been out to sea at all in my life. Air Aero says, I wonder if the stern bridge equipment, wheel, telemotor, would be reinstalled one day. I doubt it. I highly doubt it, because if they do that, you'd be asking them to take care of even more stuff that's exposed to the weather. And I don't think they want to put more stuff on their to-do list of things to take care of. I think they're trying to, if anything, make things easier for themselves, because the ship is already extremely expensive to take care of. And the more that they can enclose things and seal them up and bring them inside, the more they're going to try to do that. So, let's see. Let me just get through a couple of these and... Hey Shiloh, how's it going? So Joe B says, how long was I able to spend on the Queen Mary? 12 hours. 12 hours. So it was really not much. It really wasn't. There just wasn't enough time to do everything I wanted to do. But it was a lot better than not going at all. So, loads and loads better than not going at all. So I'll take the 12 hours, you know. But I really hope that one day I can have enough money to spend a couple of days aboard the ship. I'd really love to do that. But you know what? They're in the process of lots of revamps and stuff on the ship, so maybe it's good that I don't spend all that money now. Maybe it's good that I just wait, because, you know, if you're going to spend, you know, let's say you're going to the Queen Mary and, you know, you're going to spend a ton of money to stay there for several days. Do you want to stay there while they're working on stuff and things are behind scaffolding? Or do you want to stay there when all that's mostly done and most of the ship is available for you to see? You know, I think most people would say, I'll wait till the ship is mostly ready to be seen. You know, so that's probably a good thing that I haven't spent that money yet. Turbo McAwesome says, what tea are you drinking? I'm drinking Yorkshire Gold. Hello, Rena. David says, my wife and I will be staying on the Queen this August before our cruise begins. This will be our 5th visit. Awesome. I think you'll really like it this time, because by August there will be lots of new things on the ship, lots of changes made. So I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised to see it. Let's see here. I'm just trying to get through the chat to catch up, because I'm trying to catch up. No, today's tea is Yorkshire Gold, not Earl Grey. Well, I wouldn't say I have 80,000 new members. I'd say I'm getting close to 80,000 members in total. It's been very difficult. You know, I see YouTubers who they've been around for a year or just two, and they've already surpassed 100,000 subscribers. And me, I've been on here for going on 9 years, and I still haven't surpassed 100,000. You know, I've had to really, really work hard to earn that subscribership. I mean, it's been an uphill battle all this time, yeah, it's tough. I don't know how the other YouTubers do it. Well, actually, I know how they do it, but I don't know how they do what they do. You know, I look at other YouTubers and they have so many more skills than I do. You know, some of them can actually design things on computers. They can design like their ships and stuff on computers and make it look all realistic and sailing along the ocean and stuff. And I'm like, man, at times I wish I can do that kind of thing, but I also know that it's a lot of work and I'm not very technically savvy. So it's like, it's one of those things where even if I wanted to do it, I don't think I would, because I'm not very technically savvy. I don't like computers. I don't like them. But I have to work with computers in order to do what I do on YouTube. But yeah, you know, so I can see why like certain other channels, you know, they do very well because, you know, they're able to provide images and things that really boost the entertainment factor of their videos. And me, I have to rely entirely on historical video, historical footage, because I got nothing else. So it's interesting. Tyler says, did Queen Mary do anything to help people displaced by the fire that burned Pacific Palisades? How did Steve and Chris fare during the fires? My family and friends and other families are safe. So, yes, the Queen Mary did house many people who were displaced by the Pacific Palisades fire. I believe some of them are even still on board. We don't know the numbers, though. No one tells us how many of them there were, but from what I hear from people who've been on the ship a couple times the last couple of months, they've had meetings and things held on the ship for the passengers or people staying on the ship who have been affected by the fires. So, you know, they have meetings on the ship to kind of like help them decide where to go from here and that kind of thing. So we know that they've been on the ship. We know that they're staying on the ship. At least some of them still are, if not a lot of them. So I wish I knew more about it, but I really don't. So Steve and Chris, so Chris lives nowhere near the fires, absolutely nowhere near the fires. So he is perfectly fine. I don't think he knows anybody that was affected by the fires. He would have told me, I think, but he hasn't said anything. So I don't think he knows anybody that was affected by the fires. Steve lives in Idaho, so he's definitely not affected by the fires. If anything, his house is covered in sheets of snow, and it's gonna keep on snowing throughout the weekend. So, and I personally don't know anybody who was affected by the fires. I don't know. I don't have any insight as to that. Ozzy says they are still moving the SS United States on Monday. Okay. Ariero says, speaking of the Yarrow project, I heard one of the boiler rooms was going to be preserved when the Queen Mary came to Long Beach. Sadly, the Sea Museum wanted more space. That didn't happen. Yes, they were going to originally preserve the Boiler Room 1 and Boiler Room 2 and the forward turbo generator room. Those were slated for staying on the ship. But then the Sea Museum, the Jacques Cousteau Sea Museum, they really wanted that space. They really thought they were going to they genuinely thought they were going to use it. So they asked for it all to be removed. And, of course, nobody really thought anybody would want to see the engineering spaces on the ship. So they just went ahead and removed them. You know, they thought, well, it's not a big loss because no one's going to come down here. You know, no one wants to see this stuff. You know, but it turns out the Jacques Cousteau Museum would never really use all that space. They would only use maybe half of the space that was given to them. And then it turns out that the visitors who came to the Queen Mary did want to see the boilers, did want to see the engines. And, it, you know, most of that stuff wasn't there for them to see. So, yeah. Shy Low says, Hi, have you been to the Spruce Goose? Yes, I have. I live about 35 to 40 minutes away from McMinnville, Oregon, and I've been to the Spruce Goose twice, and I love it. I love it. It's the only airplane I've ever been interested in. Honestly, I'm not an aviation enthusiast or anything like that, but the Spruce Goose, the H-4 Hercules, it is absolutely my favorite airplane. And I think it's so interesting. And I've been there twice since I've lived up here. And it's really fun. It's really cool. It's definitely worth a visit. If you ever get to McMinnville, it's definitely worth a stop and visit. So, and the admission to the museum allows you to see the whole museum. So you can not only just see the aero... the flying planes, but you can also go to the other part of the museum, which has all the spacecraft and NASA stuff. So that's really cool. Evan says, did you have on the Queen Mary? I did. Dino, thank you so much for the super thanks, for all the great content, Dino says. Thank you so much. And hopefully I will keep bringing more good content to the channel. I've got plans on what to do next, and so I'm really hoping it, you know, people like it. So, And Scott says, that's cool, the third class nursery is coming back. Yes, that's another cool thing. Let me just take a couple sips of this because I never drink these things down. I talk so much. So good. So yes, if you haven't seen my podcast yet, the latest episode, the third class children's nursery will be replicated. It's coming back to the Queen Mary. So right now, a lot of the artifacts from the three nurseries, the first class, the second class, and third class nurseries, is in one coagulated, conglomerated space on Promenade Deck. The space is in the footprint of the original first class nursery, but it looks nothing like the first class nursery used to look. Absolutely nothing like it. The first class nursery was destroyed. I think even before the Queen Mary came to Long Beach, it was destroyed because they moved the nursery to the port side of the ship. The Cunard moved it to the port side of the ship sometime in the 1960s. So the original first-class nursery hasn't been there even before the ship came to Long Beach. And after the ship came to Long Beach, they used that room for various shops. And then at one point in the 1990s, it became an espresso bar, so you could go there and get your coffee. And so a lot of the plumbing is still under the deck and stuff like that for the espresso bar. So right now, the space is used as, and they openly admit this on the placards on the windows, that the space is not designed to look like the first class nursery, but it features stuff from all three classes. So it's not original, but the things from third class will go down to the original third class nursery on B deck by the third class staircase, and the room will be reinstated. So we were on the ship and we were passing by the third class nursery, and it just so happened the door was wide open, so we just, we kind of took a peek inside. None of us walked in, by the way, just in case people are wondering. None of us walked into that space. We knew that we weren't allowed in there. But the door was open, so we peeked our heads in. And they cleaned it out. So it used to be a storage closet, the third class nursery. All this time, since the ship has been in Long Beach, it's been a storage closet. And they've completely cleaned it out. I think they've even repainted the walls, but I don't remember very well. It didn't smell like fresh paint, but the walls were perfectly bright white clean. So it could have been repainted. But they will start installing, the original features of the third class nursery back in that spot. And it'll be a lot like the Travel Bureau on main deck, where you walk in maybe about 5 feet and you're surrounded in a plexiglass box. So you can look around as if you're in that room and you can, enjoy it, but you won't be able to fully walk in the room or touch anything because you'll be in a plexiglass box. That's what they're going to do to the third class nursery, which is really cool because it's bringing back another original space on the ship. But you might be wondering, what are they doing to the first class nursery now that nothing will be inside of it? What are they going to do? Well, there's rumor that some kind of eatery will go in there, very small place, kind of like a, order at the counter kind of thing. But there is rumor that it will be a sushi bar. So basically, countertop, you sit down at one of the bar stools or something, and then you order your sushi. Now, I have no problem with this. The reason why is because the original first class nursery, once again, that space looks nothing like it. And it would cost, in my podcast I said $1 million, but I think I doubled that. It'd be about $500,000 just to make it look like the original first class nursery. And even then, the original first class nursery, there was really no wiggle room for someone to walk in there, be surrounded by a plexiglass box, and enjoy it. There's no room for that because the room was so small. So the fact that it'll be if it is a sushi bar, I welcome it, because one of the things I emailed to management, so I remember I told you guys probably several times now that I had previously spoken to management at the Queen Mary, and they're very great people. They want to hear what people have to say. They like the feedback. Even if it's feedback where someone says, "Oh, I didn't like this," or "I didn't like that," they still want to hear it, because they want to be able to fix things. And one of the things I told them, I gave them a whole list of, here's some ways that you can make more money and do it very quickly and not have to spend, not have to break the bank doing it. And they've implemented almost all my ideas so far in some way, shape, or form. They put their own twist on it, of course. They know how to run their business the way they need it to be run. But they do take the ideas I've given them and they've kind of just run with it and done their own thing. And one of those ideas was that, well, the Queen Mary, obviously, it's a British ship, and you would expect that the food served on the ship would be, would be British food or American food, since that's the two places it went, was New York and Southampton and Cherbourg. So you probably have a little bit of French, European kind of food in there. That stuff makes sense, right? You're getting hamburgers, you're getting pizzas, you're getting, all that kind of stuff. But I presented to them an issue with just limiting the menus to that, which is, if you're in the United States and you're visiting the U.S. or you just live here, you can find pizzas and burgers and pastas everywhere. You can even find Michelin star versions of it right there in Los Angeles. So going to the Queen Mary, it can be boring when all you have is burgers and pizzas and, and pastas and steaks and stuff like that. Everybody loves a good steak. There's no doubt about that. Everybody well, except for the vegans. But people who like meat, and who like all that other stuff, it's okay to have all that stuff on the ship. But there should be more. There should be something to select from, because this is Southern California we're talking about. There is a huge diversity of different cultures and stuff like that. And, and when you're in Southern California, you want to try different things. So the ship should offer a couple of more ethnic, foods and things. There should, I feel that at least in one of the restaurants, like Promenade Cafe, Chelsea's Chowder House, maybe they should have like a selection of like, Latin inspired foods. People in Southern California love Mexican food. I mean, it's everywhere. But one of the things that it sounds like they're going for is a sushi bar. And sushi is extremely popular in Southern California. I mean, really, really popular. It's popular here in Portland, where I live, even. So, at least the west coast of the U.S., if not the entire U.S., they love sushi. And so it would actually be very easy to install a sushi bar in that space because, like I said, they already have the plumbing under the deck because it used to be a coffee bar. So they have, the water in and out. They've got the drainage, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be easy to install a sushi bar. All they make is rice and they cut up raw fish. So they just need freezers and stuff like that, refrigerators and all that. So it shouldn't be hard to do that kind of thing. And it would earn the ship a lot of money. It really would. It would earn them a lot of money. But they should also have other stuff too. And, one of my other ideas was, instead of reopening Sir Winston's, which, no doubt it was a great restaurant. People loved it. But it's hard to get to. You have to climb those stairs. And the Veranda Grill, which is much easier to get to, used to be the premier restaurant on the ship. That should be the premier restaurant, is Veranda Grill. They should make that space into a premier restaurant on the ship again. And you can enjoy an Art Deco atmosphere as you have your different foods. And it's called Veranda Grill, so you could have stuff like steaks and beef Wellington and all that kind of stuff, So there should be stuff like that. But yeah, so hopefully they bring in more selection in terms of food. It's always good to be able to get your hamburgers, your pastas, your steaks, all that kind of stuff, but it's also good to have a bit of ethnic food as well. So that's just what would earn the ship more money. So D says, would you ever move back to Southern California if you felt like it would enable you to be closer to places that you cover on YouTube? I've thought about it so much. Because, the Queen Mary is in Southern California. I love the Queen Mary. And I've pretty much, if you really take a look at the last 5 years of my life, I've pretty much dedicated the last 5 years of my life to the Queen Mary, and it looks like there's no stopping. Looks like I'm still going to keep dedicating more of my life to it. And so it makes sense, right? Why not live closer to the ship so I can be there more often and do the things I need to do? Problem is that Southern California is extremely expensive to live. Here in, where I live, just outside of Portland, Oregon, I rent a 3-bedroom apartment, and for the price I pay for this apartment, I still wouldn't be able to afford a studio apartment in Southern California. For the price I pay for this 3-bedroom, this is considered halfway to luxury, actually, this apartment. It's considered like halfway to a luxury apartment. There's only like a few amenities and things that's missing before it's considered a luxury complex. And for the price I pay for this, I wouldn't even be able to afford a studio apartment in Southern California. That's how expensive it is. And so if I wanted to live in Southern California, I would need to be earning some serious money. Some serious money. And I don't. Not from YouTube. It's a struggle. YouTube is a struggle, honestly. But I love what I do, so I don't want to stop struggling. It's like this is the best job I've ever had in my life, and I've had some really cool jobs, you know. So, you know, I love what I do on YouTube, but I need to earn a lot more to afford it. But the other thing that would probably convince me to go is if I worked on the Queen Mary. You know, if I was offered a really well-paying position on the ship, I'd take it in a heartbeat. Honestly, if the Queen Mary was like, hey, you know, we could really use you for such and such job, I have no idea what they would offer me. If the Queen Mary was like, hey, we could really use you for such and such job position, and we would pay you enough to rent your own apartment and live not too far from the ship so you can get here all the time, I'd take it in a heartbeat. But, okay, let's go. I wouldn't even think about it. I'd do it. But there is a problem with living in Southern California, which is that I hate Southern California. I'm sorry. I grew up there, so I can say it. I grew up there, and I lived there my whole life, and I always hated it. I always hated it, because everything was. I mean, I know it's a bit of an exaggeration, but to me, the whole place is just a giant concrete jungle. Just a giant concrete jungle, and it's falling apart, and, you know, and the air is dirty, unless it's raining. That's the only time the air gets clean is when it rains. You know, and, you know, none of the things that people like about Southern California are things I like. People like going to the beach. I don't like going to the beach. The beaches in Southern California are so dirty. You know, they are some of the most polluted beaches in the world. The only reason why it's not considered the most polluted is because trash doesn't necessarily wash up onto the shore like in other places of the world. Instead, the polluted part of the beach is the chemicals and the sewage in the water. Actual raw sewage in the waters along the beaches. And the only reason why the beaches aren't closed all the time is because they have a threshold where they say, you know what, this much raw sewage is perfectly acceptable for people to swim in. But once it goes over that threshold, then we can close the beaches and warn people about it. And so Southern California's beaches have the most, like the highest concentration of raw sewage in the country. And I even know where that sewage comes from too. There's a place down in like Huntington Beach where it's a sewage processing plant, and they release sewage once in a while when the plant is overflowing. Now they probably tell people, oh well, you know, we make sure that it's diluted or something like that, right? They probably say it's diluted or whatever, but I don't know. All I know is I walk by that place, they're releasing brown water like right into the ocean. And I'm like, nah, no thanks. I'm not going to swim. So, there's things like that, you know. Just so much. Things people like to do in Southern California. I don't like the sun. Look how pale I am. I don't like the sun. So I don't sunbathe or anything like that. I don't go to swimming pools because I think swimming pools are also gross. I'm just not built for Southern California. And so the only way I would ever live there is if I had a job on the Queen Mary. You know, I would never pass up a job on the Queen Mary that paid me enough to live there. I'm not on the ship. I would live on the ship, actually. If they said, Alex, you can have one of the staterooms on the ship and you can live here as long as you do this job, I'd do it. I would pack up my things and I would go. I would do it. So, yeah, Queen Mary Management, if you're listening. You got someone who knows a lot about the history of the ship and the engineering of it. And if you ever want to hire somebody who lives on the ship, I'm your guy. But yeah, enough of that silliness, you guys. Let's see what we got here. Air Eero says, wonder what other kind of Queen Mary type of stuff you have drawn up to show to QMI, though I'm sure it's a secret for now. I haven't drawn anything for QMI. I've drawn stuff for Fogbank Industrial Arts, and I'm still working on that. You know, they're the ones that are in charge of the Yarrow project. But QMI, I haven't drawn anything for them yet. I'm I'm working with them to promote their, their efforts, but I haven't done any artwork or anything like that for them because, frankly, they haven't asked me. They don't need it. But yeah. Tyler, oh, that's awesome. You got a model of the SS America. Nice. Air Eero says, do you have a favorite American railroad company? Probably the Durango and Rio Grande Western. I like a lot of their stuff. Barry Grice says, hey Alex, always great channel. Was wondering on how the UK visit is coming along. Any updates? Also, is YouTube now your main job, or do you have another career? So, okay, so I'll just say this quickly because in every live stream I talk about this, every single live stream. But the UK visit is on indefinite hold because I simply don't have the money to go. I just can't. I can't earn enough of it. And, if anything, I'm in debt right now because I don't earn enough money from YouTube. People have essentially stopped watching my YouTube content, so I don't earn any ad revenue from anything. The channel is basically dying, is what's happening. And I'm struggling every single day to keep it going. So there's no way I can invest in something like going to the UK because I don't have the money. So, yeah. So the UK visit is on indefinite hold. I wish it wasn't, but part of the reason why I was trying to get it going was I went to New Orleans to get a bunch of footage and stuff to make video content to help me boost my channel so I can pay for the UK trip. And then that ended up being a bust because so far the New Orleans content hasn't done very well. But I'm working on another New Orleans history video to see if people like that. And if they do, then more stuff like that will come along. So I'll just have to wait and see. Honestly, I've had 2024 was the worst year for my channel. The worst year. Because everything just took a dive. Just completely took a dive. And now I'm struggling for views. So is this my job? Yes, it is. This is my one and only job. I used to be a chef. I used to have various jobs, in my young adult life. But my schizophrenia has made it very difficult to keep working. And after my business in California closed in 2020, I just gave up. I was like, you know what? I already was having trouble with this place, and then the pandemic ended up closing it. And so now this is what I do, is this YouTube thing. And it's one of the only things I can do. With schizophrenia, it makes it very, very difficult to work in very high-stress environments. But the other thing, too, is that nobody can really pay me what I'm worth. So in order for me to earn a living wage or something like that, I have to be paid more than $20 an hour. And nobody can pay me that. They're all paying the minimum wage and stuff like that. So, it's just I would need to be offered, something that is, first of all, what I'm qualified for. But second of all, a living wage. So YouTube right now pays me at least a living wage as long as I keep up with it, so, and I wouldn't, so things like working on the Queen Mary, for instance, if they offered me a job, I wouldn't consider that a high stress job, because even if I had a lot of projects to do and things, I would love doing it. If you really, really love the place you work, my previous cafe, I loved that place. I was able to stay there so long because, I owned it, but I mean, I was able to do that job for as long as I did because I loved it so much. So that helps when you have schizophrenia, because if you really love what you do, then the high stress moments, it doesn't affect you. But if you work a place you definitely don't want to be, you know, I've had jobs like that, and I didn't last very long. It just didn't work, you know. But yeah, so it is what it is. But YouTube has really been a saving grace, and especially covering Queen Mary content has been a saving grace because, you know, I don't think I have said this yet because I don't think I included it in my last video, but the Queen Mary really has changed my life. That ship has single-handedly changed my life for the better. Because in 2020, everything was going downhill for me. I had to close my business. I had to move up here to Portland, Oregon, so I had no financial prospects. I had no place to live. I mean, it was just like, it was one of the worst years for me financially. But as soon as I started covering Queen Mary content, everything started working out for me. And I started meeting lots of new people. I've made so many new friends because of the Queen Mary. And so even though I don't live near my friends right now, I have a lot of them. And if I go down to Queen Mary, I can meet most of them, you know. That ship has really improved my life. And so that's part of the reason why I feel so dedicated to it, is because it's like, you know, it helped me in times when I really needed it, and now I want to continue helping the ship. So, you know, it's just been fantastic. So even though there have been times where things are really, really challenging, I think eventually stuff kind of pulls through and things work out. I mean, look, I just a couple of weeks ago, I would have said, oh, it's impossible for me to visit the Queen Mary at all in the year 2025. I literally would have said that to people because I couldn't see a way out of this. I couldn't see a way to go to the Queen Mary and, you know, and see the ship again. You know, I honestly thought, oh, I'm probably never going to see the ship for another couple of years, at least. And, you know, like I said earlier in the live stream, the stars just aligned for that trip, and I was able to go. And that, I attribute that to, well, I mean, my cousin made that happen. But if it wasn't for the fact that I was doing it for the Queen Mary, I don't think I would have seen my family. I hadn't seen them in 5 years. I don't think I would have seen them for another 5 years, honestly, if I wasn't doing that trip for the Queen Mary. So, yeah, so that ship has really changed my life in a very positive way. And I don't want to stop. You know, I want to keep going. You know, because when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with Disneyland. I knew everything about Walt Disney. I knew everything about Disneyland. That was a place I wanted to dedicate my life because it made people happy. I wanted to make people happy. And so when I got my job there, I was willing to work from the bottom and get to the top. You know, I wanted to further Walt Disney's legacy. You know, that was my goal. And that company was terrible. Well, I mean, I don't blame Walt Disney. I blame the modern company as it is. It was absolutely terrible. It ruined my life. And I dedicated my life to that company. And when I left, nobody even remembered me. I was there for 6 years. I know that doesn't sound long for much people, but when you start off as a teenager, you work there at 17, you know, and you don't leave till you're 23 or 24, you know, it's a long time for you. And I was 100% dedicated to that company. That's how I am when I work jobs. I am very dedicated. It doesn't matter how tired or exhausted I am. I keep plowing through it. I do it. I live it. I breathe it. You know, when I dedicate myself to a job, I'm 100% at it. And with Disney, I gave it everything. Everything. You know, even my social life was sacrificed for the sake of the company. And when I left, I was just another number on their papers. I meant nothing to them. And nobody I worked with for 6 years even remembered who I was. Because I would go back to the park just to visit. You know, I'd be there with my friend Eric or with my friend Chris or something, my friend Steve. We'd go back to the park and I might occasionally see someone I worked with, and they would have no idea who I was. They knew me for 6 years. They had no idea who I was. So I meant nothing. I meant nothing to that company or to the people I worked with. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like the feeling of I've dedicated so much of myself to this job and nobody cares. You know, so the Queen Mary changed that for me, because you know, even the cafe I owned, I was the chef there, but I doubt any of my previous customers probably remember who I am. You know, I think the only people who would really remember me is the people like my business partner, and then my cousin worked for me at my cafe at one point, so my cousin of course remembers me, but I don't think anybody else really remembers me. So I've never had a job where I felt like I mattered. And no matter how much dedication I've given to it, I never felt like what I did mattered. But with the Queen Mary, I feel like everything I do, when I talk about the ship or I bring people together, I got people emailing me. I got emails last night from people who, you know, they're going to college, they're trying to be a journalist, you know, they want to do a story for their school, you know, paper or whatever, or not, like, you know, their project. And, you know, I can bring people together. I can say, okay, well, I know people at the ship who can help you to get that story so you can get a paper done and you can, you know, graduate from that class or from your school. And I love that I can do that for people. It makes me feel like I am actually making a difference. So I'm not just out here talking about, oh, well, they fixed a light fixture on the Queen Mary. I mean, that's great. That's wonderful. That makes people feel better. But I can do much more amazing things now, like bringing people together and making things happen for the ship, or making things happen for people who want to help the ship. And that's been the greatest rewarding job of my life. And I'm not even signed on to the Queen Mary, you know, paycheck list. I'm just doing it from my house on my YouTube channel. So this has been the greatest job of my life. That's why I say, as much as I complain about views on my channel or not getting enough money, the ship has helped me. Somehow, in some way, things always end up being okay. And it wouldn't have been that way if I wasn't covering Queen Mary content. There is something about the Queen Mary, and you can ask Shiloh, you can ask a bunch of other people. They will say, if you take care of this ship, the ship will take care of you. I don't know how it works. We don't know what kind of magic or voodoo it is, but it works. And so, you know, it's been the greatest pleasure of any kind of job I've had of my life. You know, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So yeah, I don't want to stop doing it. And I know I'm on a soapbox now, so I'm going to climb down from that and get to more questions. But yeah, I just want people to know, as much as I complain at times, I don't want to do anything else except make, you know, Queen Mary content and help the Queen Mary. It's what I love the most. People talking about the sewage in the Southern California beaches. Yeah, that's it. Yep. Yeah. Airy Arrow says, when are the fiberglass lifeboats going to be installed on the Queen Mary? I wonder if they're going to paint it in the white-brown color scheme as seen in the old photos. So we don't know when fiberglass replacements will go up. The first thing that has to be done first is to repair the davits, because the davits are actually, the bases of the davits are all rotten out. They're not even touching the support system of the ship. So, all this time, for the last like 30 years or so, the lifeboats, all their weight has been supported on the promenade deck windows, which were not designed to support the entire weight. They were only designed to support maybe a third of the weight. And so that's why all the promenade deck windows, all that's rotten out, and there was broken glass. They've since repaired and replaced all the glass panes that have been broken, which is really cool, because you used to be able to walk down the promenade and you'd see just cracked glass, and that's not the case anymore. They're all fixed. But yeah, so none of the davits can support any weight right now. They're all rotten at the bottom. So the bottoms of all the davits will have to be repaired. And then the side shell, which is underneath the windows of the promenade deck, all of that steel has to be replaced because it's so rotten. Because the davits themselves were a bit rotten, so whenever it rained, water would come down and come all the way down to promenade deck and then wash down the scuppers and wet the steel, wet the davit bases, and then rot it all out. And so all that has to be replaced before they can even put more weight up there on the sun deck. And then once all that is repaired, then they can think about making fiberglass replacements. They haven't said they're going to do fiberglass. It's just that it's an idea. They have, it's an idea. They might end up replacing them completely with actual steel lifeboats. They may fully replicate them. We don't know, but they could do something lightweight. As for whether they will be painted white and brown like the originals, I hope they do. I hope that they do, because the original lifeboats, it was beautiful, white and brown, not white and black like they are today. So it would be nice if they did it like that. So I don't know, but we'll see. That kind of project is way in the future, because that'll cost millions upon millions of dollars to do. It's so expensive that right now even the city of Long Beach isn't quite sure how they're going to do it, because it's so expensive. And it's so invasive, the project. They'd have to rip out steel that's currently on the ship just to replace it. So it's definitely one of those, it's going to be one of the most difficult projects to get done aboard the Queen Mary. So that's interesting. Whoa, look at this. Someone donated. Outbacker, thank you so much. I'm glad you got back to the Queen Mary. I sure did enjoy my stay on her a couple months ago. Any concern from your visit coming down the... Concern or consent? Any content from your visit coming down the pipeline? Sorry I joined late if you already went over this. Yes, so there will be more content, not specifically based upon my visit, but content that was filmed on the ship during my visit. So there will be content like that coming. I have a plan. I don't want to reveal what it is yet, for a really big project, like a video for my channel. I don't want to reveal what it is yet because I'm so afraid someone else is going to get to it first, and it's going to take me a long time to work on it. It's a lot of work. When I make documentaries that are like 45 minutes long, it takes me months to do those. It takes me months. And so, not even like a week, not a couple of days, not a month, it's several months. And so this project is definitely going to be huge, and I want to get it done, but it'll take a long time. So that's why I don't want to mention what it is, because I'm afraid someone else is going to do it. They're going to be like, oh, that's a great idea. And then they do it, and then I'm like, oh, great. I just did all this work and revealed what it was that I was going to do. So, yeah. But there will be content that will use the footage I filmed on that last visit. There just won't be any content specifically talking about my last visit, because that's what the podcast was for. The podcast talked about my last visit. Hello, Mark. How's it going? Let's see. Kevin... Oh, they're just putting a comment to that. So, Mark says, your content is the best and well worth the wait. Oh, thank you so much. Ken, thank you so much for the donation. My goodness. Um, Geez, everybody is so nice. I just can't even believe it. See, this is like what I'm talking about. I've never met so many, like, nice and you know, what's the word? For lack of better words, giving people. I've never met so many people until I've actually covered Queen Mary content. I know all you guys now because of the Queen Mary. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about. Back when I did Disney content, I really didn't know that many people, and there was only a handful of people that I would say are, you know, still my friends and are still very, what's the word? Generous. My goodness, why does that word escape me all the time? Generous people, you know, so this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. I meet so many generous people from Queen Mary content, a lot more than I've met from people who did, you know, from the Disney content I did. So, Air Arrow says, you're carrying the Queen Mary community, Alex. If it weren't for you, the YouTube search results on the Queen Mary would mostly be those atrocious paranormal videos. I mean, I can't argue with that, actually. When I first started doing Queen Mary content, pretty much the only thing you could see on YouTube at that time was all the paranormal videos. I mean, there was a few things here and there where someone posted a clip of, you know, the Queen Mary coming to Long Beach. You know, someone posted a clip of you know, celebrating the Queen Mary's, you know, anniversary, that kind of thing. But there wasn't too many, like, YouTube-based content on the Queen Mary. And that was something I wanted to change. I was like, you know, I looked up the other day on my channel. I have 88, well, I think it's now 89 or 90 at this point, 90 videos about the Queen Mary. 90. Now, some of it is live streams, but nevertheless, that's technically counted as a video. But I have 90 videos about the Queen Mary on my channel. And there's probably more because some of them aren't even labeled specifically Queen Mary. Some of them are labeled about something else, but it talks about the Queen Mary. So that's interesting. 90 videos. Air Arrow says, since the third class nursery is coming back, I wonder if the synagogue could come back too in the future. That's a good question. I actually don't know. We have talked about it online, actually, because once the rumor of the return of the third class nursery was going around, a lot of people were wondering if it meant the synagogue would come back too, because the synagogue's right next door. I hope it does. I hope the synagogue comes back, but there's no word on it at all so far. So, Ron says, Alex, thank you for doing your part to help the Queen Mary. Oh, it's my pleasure. Like I said, that ship has really changed my life for the better. It's made my life so much better. I mean, I at this point, I feel like not just grateful, you know, not just like wanting to do things to help the ship in return, but I feel like this is what I was meant to do in life. You ever have that moment in life where, well, I mean, you know, for most of your life, you're kind of like, okay, I have all these interests, I do all these things for work, but what is my calling? And all my life I've wondered, what is my calling? I never knew what it was. I did all these different things. I was a tour guide at Disneyland. I thought that's what I really was meant to do because I love Disneyland, or used to love Disneyland history. I don't care about the company anymore. That company soured me. But at one point I thought that my lot in life, my calling in life, was to be a Disneyland tour guide, and it wasn't. It just didn't turn out to be that way. Then I thought, you know, being a chef was my calling in life. I went to culinary school. I did all these things. Despite having schizophrenia, I was able to accomplish all this stuff and make it to having my own business at a certain point. And for the longest time, I thought that was my calling in life. But I slowly fell out of love with cooking. I was like, cooking is for me is not a blessing. It's become this huge curse. And so, 2020, one of the biggest issues with that year, besides, obviously COVID and all that, one of the biggest issues was I was having a huge personal crisis. I was like, what is my calling in life? What am I supposed to do? Nothing I do works out. It just doesn't work out the way and, a lot of my friends believe that things happen for a reason. Even a lot of members of my family believe that too. They say things happen for a reason. And I was like, well, what reason is it? I'm ready to know what it is in life that I'm meant to do. And as soon as I started covering Queen Mary content, it was like I knew. I was like, this is what I meant to do in life. Because I love it. I love it so much, and it's very rewarding. Not just YouTube donations, obviously. Meeting people. I am so social now because I meet so many people. And I've met a lot of really wonderful people thanks to the Queen Mary, And so, yeah, it's just, I feel like I have a place now in life. And it's the Queen Mary. So, cheers to that. Mark says, I believe we have many callings which appeared to us at the right time in our lives. I think so too. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Ron. Give that a little heart. Yeah, thank you so much, Ron. That's so generous of you. But yes, to Mark, yeah, I believe we now, now that I can look at it in hindsight, something appears, before us at the right time in life. And the important thing is whether or not you take the opportunity or you pass it by. There's been people who, in my life, I see an opportunity land in their lap, and they're so unsure of themselves that sometimes they just say, you know what, I'll put that to the side and I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. And from an outside perspective, I'm like, no, you gotta take the opportunity. That is where you're meant to be. And so I never wanted to be like that. I wanted to be the kind of person where if an opportunity came and I knew that it was the thing I was meant to do, that I would not pass it up. And so, yeah. Yep. Chris says the bird flu is... Yeah. That bird flu thing. Oh my gosh. Because it's like one of the few things I can afford was chicken and eggs. And I can't afford any of that now. It's become so expensive. And, of course, a lot of that stuff is not even available on store shelves anymore. So, yeah, that's just crazy. Okay, so the shipyard says, hey Alex, very random question, but do we know what the Queen Mary's galleys look like today? Most of the ship's galleys, aside from a handful or so, are still in use. So they still use them. Some of them have been expanded. Some of them have been downsized. but they're all still in use pretty much, except for maybe a couple of third class pantries and things. Some of those aren't used at all anymore. They're empty or gutted or something. But most of the ship's pantries and galleys are still in use to this day. They have modern equipment in them, especially the main galley, which is on our deck. That one was recently completely renovated with all new equipment. Back in 2023, early 2023, before the ship reopened, they replaced all the kitchen equipment and repaired the ventilation system so that way it could properly ventilate. So yeah. Mr. PH30, I already talked about that in the live stream, so I'm going to spare everybody the repeat. I'll just have to say you'll have to go back and rewatch that. And plus, I talk about it in almost every single live stream, too. So even if you missed it from this one, it's in the last one and the one before that. So, Ron says, Alex, I appreciate your channel. I know you work hard on your content. You're doing great work. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really try on that content. Moonzer asked, Did you know they took the telegraphs out of the wheelhouse of the Queen Mary refit? I mean, it doesn't surprise me, because if you're going to refit something, you got to remove the equipment. So it doesn't surprise me. And that kind of thing happens like at Disneyland all the time. Sometimes they'll completely empty out a ride, take all the props and everything out of it to do a complete refit. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me that they took the telegraphs out. But they're there now, so... AJB says, hello, do you know if there's any difference between American and Italian ocean liners in the 1920s? My great-grandfather took the I can't pronounce that. In the early 1920s to come to the U.S. Do I know if there's a difference? Just design-wise. I mean, I don't think there's any structural... every ship is different, but I don't think there's anything specific. Like, it's not like the Italians were using some kind of engine that nobody else could have. You know, yeah, the only thing is really design style. That's it. But every ship had a different design style from one another. Even sister ships often had a little bit of difference. So that's kind of the only thing I can say about that. Outbacker says, did you have a chance to attend the Sunday brunch or see Alex Mendham? No, unfortunately, I was there on a Saturday, so I really didn't have time for any of that. And plus, even if I did have the time, even if I was there on a Sunday, for instance, I wouldn't have had time for the brunch. I only had 12 hours on the ship, and I had to condense all the things I wanted to do over a 5-day period and condense it down to 12 hours. So I really didn't have time for something like a Sunday brunch or an Alex Mendham concert. So I was really too busy doing a bunch of other things anyway. Sarah, thank you so much for your donation. Oh my goodness. Everybody's so nice and generous. Why? Why, people? Thank you guys so much. Mr. PH says, if you want a mini Norway cruise en route to where Hurtigruten, I can't pronounce that, starts from, take Fjord Line 2, day route from, okay, and to Bergen where start, okay. Oh gosh, I don't know if I'll ever make it to Norway. That's so far from here. The shipyard says, I have an idea how to spice up Queen Mary second class suites. They should make some into Titanic suites. I think that would entice a lot of people who want the ocean liner or Titanic experience. That probably would. I'll admit that. If they advertised it, it probably would. But I personally wouldn't want that for the Queen Mary. I don't think the Queen Mary should be popular because of the Titanic. I don't think it should be piggybacking off of the Titanic's popularity. I think people need to see why the Queen Mary is so cool and so interesting. And it needs, in order for that to happen, it needs to be without the Queen Mary. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like when a celebrity offers so much to people, but it needs to step out of the shadow of their friendships with other celebrities, so that way they can shine on their own. The Queen Mary is kind of like that, where even right now, a lot of people love... I mean, you go to the Queen Mary, and so many people are like, wow, so this is like Titanic? And it's like, I mean, us who are in the know, we know that it's absolutely nothing like Titanic. Absolutely nothing like it. But people, so many people compare the two ships because it's the only thing they have to compare it to. And the more we can educate people and get them to see what makes Queen Mary so different and so cool in and of her own right, I think the better. If people came to the Queen Mary expecting to see Titanic, I think that would really ruin the whole point of the Queen Mary, the whole history of the Queen Mary. I think people would have unrealistic expectations of the Queen Mary after that. I mean, after you see, you know, you're living in a, you know, Edwardian style stateroom for a couple of days, and you go out and you see these Art Deco rooms, you're gonna think, wow, this looks so different, and my stateroom looks better. You know, I get that a lot from people. In fact, they go, oh, look at Titanic's grand staircase, and you compare it to Queen Mary's, and Queen Mary's is nothing. And it's like, but you shouldn't be comparing them. They're two very different ships, you know. Titanic's grand staircase is an Edwardian marvel, but Queen Mary's grand staircase is an Art Deco marvel. It's a different type of style altogether, and there were different intentions behind the artistic style of it and the design. So, you know, I don't want to encourage people to make comparisons to the ship. But I do think that there are certain things you can do. Like, you can contrast the two ships. So, like, it would be interesting if there was, like, a tour where people could take where they could see the similarities and the differences. But yeah, I wouldn't want to build Titanic on the Queen Mary. I think that would really throw a wrench in the works. Let's see. Air Eero says, what if they brought back some of the Queen Mary's third-class cabins as exhibits? That's one of the projects I am working on. I want to present it to the Queen Mary management at some point. It's not going to be a lot of cabins, maybe just one or two, but there's a section of the third class that I want to bring back to the ship because I think it will help give people a good understanding, a good view of what third class on the Queen Mary really looked like. Because as it stands, there aren't any places on the ship where you could say, oh, that's definitely third class. I mean, if you know a lot about the ship, you can walk into the third class staircase area and you know this is what third class looked like. But unless someone told you, you would think it was just another first class area. You know, there should be an area on the ship where you look at it and you're like, oh, this is so not the same as first class. And there's a certain area on the ship that does that. And I would like to present my ideas to the Queen Mary people and show them how they can bring a little bit of that back for very, very little cost. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't see a problem with bringing back one or two third class cabins for view, because they could use that as part of the tour. They could show people, they could say, you know, like, when you take this tour, you're going to see these third class spaces. But bringing back a whole lot of them, I don't think is worth it. It'll cost way too much money and it won't generate any revenue. So, yeah. Mark says, "You are so right, Alex. Queen Mary is an Art Deco masterpiece of a different time to Titanic and offers her own marvels. What they share is their purpose, which is honored by the existing ship models." Yep, exactly. Ron Benny says, "Question, have you considered reworking your Why I Hate Normandy video? Thought all your points were valid and found it lighthearted and cheeky. Maybe you took a lot of heat on that one." I have two videos. I have Why I Hate Normandy, and I have Why I Love Normandy. Oh, for heaven's sake. That's my sister calling me in the middle of a live stream. So yeah. So yeah, I have two videos. Why I Hate Normandy, Why I Love Normandy. And they're both lighthearted. They're not... They are meant to teach a lesson, which is a lesson in tolerance. Because I don't hate Normandy, but I was accused of it prior to making those videos. I was often accused of hating Normandy simply because I didn't want to make a video about SS Normandy, and because I've expressed several times that I really don't prefer SS Normandy to Queen Mary. In my personal taste, Queen Mary is my more favorite ship. And some people cannot stand it. Some people cannot stand that Queen Mary is my favorite ship above Titanic. They can't stand it. They have no tolerance for it whatsoever. And so those videos were both a lesson in tolerance. And of course, many of the people who watched those videos didn't understand them. They immediately took it, you know, for face value, and were like, "Oh, yeah, just creating hate content and blah blah." And it's like, but if you really watch the videos, you'll see that it's not hate content at all. But that is the way that people are. You can't create art without someone being overly critical about it. But yeah, so I don't know. I've grown to just accept that people will not like my opinions on Normandy or Titanic and stuff like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with Normandy or Titanic. They're just not my favorite ships, and I have reasons for them to not be my favorite. I think that's what bothers people the most, is that I have reasons why they're not my favorite. I think if I told people blindly they're just not my favorite, I don't know why, people would be more accepting of that. They'd be like, "Oh, well, he's just ignorant. That's why he doesn't like Normandy or Titanic more than Queen Mary." But because I have reasons, oh, they can't stand that. They can't stand it at all. They do not want to hear anything negative about their favorite ships, because heaven forbid they do, then, you know, oh, I'm just evil. I'm an evil person. You know, so you can believe that. It's just like, what? The Shipyard says, "I'm still under the opinion Titanic 2 should be a stationary replica of the original. The Queen Mary has proven these types of attractions can work, especially with the prestige of Titanic." I would be more comfortable with a replica of Olympic than a replica of Titanic. I think it's insensitive to rebuild something that was destroyed in such a huge tragedy. Because we know, I mean, you can say, oh, but it's for education. And it's like, that's true. That's true. There is an education opportunity there. But you know, deep down, that the real reason people want it is because they think it's so cool that it sank the way it did. I mean, you talk to people all the time and they go, oh, this ship is so awesome. And people, they go to like the Pigeon Forge Titanic and stuff, and they make such light of the Titanic. One of the reasons why James Cameron made the Titanic movie was because Titanic at that point in time had become such legend, such, even to the point where it was starting to pass into myth, that people really just didn't see it for the gravity that it was. They thought it was just a really cool looking ship that sank, and people were developing these unhealthy interests in the sinking. And James Cameron was like, he wanted to really show the gravity of it. In fact, he even wrote a line in the movie for Bill Paxton to say, where he said, well, for so many years, he thought nothing of Titanic. He never really understood it, never let it in. And so that's the moment when he throws his cigar. Because, Bill Paxton's character, he thought about Titanic all the time. But he never truly understood how tragic it was. And I think that's the problem I have with replicating Titanic as a cruise ship or even as a museum, because in reality, the majority of people are going there because they think it's so cool that this giant ship sank the way it did. If they could, they'd watch on loop a sinking version of it. In fact, they do. There are videos online that replicate the sinking of Titanic, both in CGI and in cardboard. People love to watch this ship sink. And I think that if you're interested in engineering and you want to learn how things fail so you can make things better, okay, I can understand why you're watching it. But people watch that stuff because they think it's so cool. And I think that's the unhealthy part about it. That's the part about it where I'm like, it shouldn't be seen that way. It'd be like rebuilding the Twin Towers just so you could watch them crumble all over again. It's just wrong, in my opinion. And so, yeah. But if someone said, okay, well, I'm going to make a replica of Olympic, right? Because Olympic looks so much like Titanic. There's just some minor differences. But if someone said, I'm going to replicate Olympic, and Olympic itself was a famous ship of her own, so there is reason to replicate her because, she was already a very famous, well-known, and celebrated ship. Especially having lasted so long. Having lasted until 1935. So... yeah, then I wouldn't have a problem with it. And if they wanted to put a museum in there that was dedicated to the loss of Titanic, okay, that's cool. Alright, But yeah, I think I would just have a problem seeing them replicate Titanic. To me, it's like rebuilding the Twin Towers so you can say, look at what was destroyed and look at how it was destroyed and how cool it was that it all came toppling down, and it just seems very insensitive to me. So, yeah, so what time is it? 2:55. So been on since 1. All right, so we'll end this stream very soon. Outbacker says, at the Luxor in Vegas, they sell Titanic snow globes. How insensitive is that? I know. That's the thing, is that people these days, they don't see how insensitive it is, you know? You know what I mean? Like, if you're one of those people, for instance, let's say you lived in a really nice house in South Carolina where they had those floods earlier last or like late last year. They had those devastating floods. And imagine you died in your very nice house. And someone was like, let's make that house into a snow globe where you can where you can watch this, you know, this blue oil water come in and wash over your house. Like, how insensitive would that be? You know, like, people don't see it that way, though. They go, no, but it's Titanic. It's a beautiful piece of art and engineering. And it's like, yes, so enjoy the photos of it. But why do you gotta make a snow globe out of it? You know, like, I don't know. And it's not like I'm 100% against everything. I mean, this is my replica White Star Line plate. So I have one. I have memorabilia and things. I think it's a beautiful plate, and I wanted to have it, so I bought it. You know, it's a replica, of course, not real, but you know, so I think certain things are okay, but I don't know. I just dropped a bunch of stuff. You know, I have a model of Titanic. I didn't buy it. My mother bought it for me, so I didn't ask her to. So, you know, I'm like, well, I have this model. Might as well build it. In fact, I held on to that model for like 2 or 3 years before I built it. I finally built it in 2012. But I don't think I would have ever built it. Not necessarily because I'm like, oh, it's insensitive to build a model. But just because, well, I guess I just didn't care that much about having a model of Titanic. But, I mean, I am interested in architecture and engineering and, you know, I don't know. I think there's a fine line between what you do because you love the architecture and engineering of Titanic versus watching, like, you know, flooding videos of the Titanic and the cardboard Titanic breaking in half or something. It's just weird, you know? So let's see. I've seen that video, Air Eero, the commercialization of a disaster by Nautical Study. I've seen it. It was good. It was good because I agree with it 100%. I'm like, it's become such a commercial thing. You know, in fact, there was someone, I don't know who said it, but it was passed along to me by many people. But, you know, I was asking somebody, you know, how come the Queen Mary doesn't get the attention that Titanic does? I mean, Titanic is at the bottom of the ocean, and the Queen Mary is here. It's here above the water where you can visit it. Why isn't she the more famous ship? And the person said to me, I think they might have even been quoting someone else, but that the worst tragedy of Queen Mary is that she never sank. And that made so much sense to me, because I'm like, you know what? If the Queen Mary had sank, she probably would be, you know, even more famous than she is now. The tragedy of Queen Mary is that there is no tragedy. You know, and so that is one of those things where when I started making Queen Mary content, I wanted to change the way people thought of things. The Queen Mary doesn't have to be awesome because she sank or she exploded during World War II or something. She can be awesome because she's a survivor. She survives all these things throughout the 90 years that the ship has been around that have threatened to completely destroy or terminate the ship permanently. And at every single time it happens, she thwarts it and she's able to survive. So the Queen Mary is a survivor. And I think that is the more interesting story to me. So, let's see. Yeah, I mean, it is human nature to obsess over disasters. I mean, that's for sure. People find tragedies and disasters very interesting, which I think I do too. There are certain things where I'm like, okay, that's super interesting. Like the 1906 earthquake. There's something about it where I just keep wanting to learn more, you know. But I don't build models of of devastated San Francisco where all the buildings are burnt to the ground and toppled and stuff like that. But I mean, but yeah, tragedies are interesting to people. Yeah. But anyway, it is now 3:01, folks. I think I'm going to get going. So I'll be working on some content, both Queen Mary and non-Queen Mary, and then of course we're going to continue on with our podcasts about every 2 weeks. I know I originally said the podcast will come out the second and fourth Saturdays of every month, but staying on a schedule on this YouTube channel, which is always so wild, is so difficult to keep up with. But I will try to put them out every 2 weeks, the podcasts, and they are interesting, even if you're not interested in podcasts normally. If you like Queen Mary content and you like looking at video footage and things, we have all that. We have lots of images on the podcast. It's not just me and Shiloh talking to each other through, you know, a Zoom call or something, where we actually do show things on the podcasts. So it's like a lecture series, kind of. And then we'll have eventually guests on the show. It's difficult to get guests right now because our show is so new. I think a lot of people want us to be more established before they come on, but we will have them eventually. We will have guests on. Anyway, folks, thank you all so much for joining me on this live stream, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.